So hello everyone, I'm Jakub. I'm co-founder of HydraDX and Basilisk. So today I would like to have quite unexpected talk and present our thesis, why we still believe that users and liquidity will love Polkadot. So today content would be where is Polkadot fitting in the year 2023 and beyond? What's the state of Polkadot and UX, and if Polkadot can or cannot serve meaningful liquidity. So obviously most of you are in crypto for some time, so last year was absolute a chain of shit shows. Started with Luna, 3AC, Celsius, BlockFi, FTX, Genesis. After yesterday, it might be even Binance. We will see. And why I'm mentioning these disasters is because these companies or parties, they were also providing tens of billions of liquidity into whole ecosystem. So for example, FTX users, what we find out in very tragic events was basically that all funds was coming together with Alameda, which was one of the biggest market maker, not just on the FTX, but they were basically operating on all other centralized exchanges. So it has a lot of implications. DeFi apes basically became endangered species. This is some ape after a lot of liquidations. This is how most of us were looking at the end of the last year in front of the computers. But surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, macro is even bigger shit show. And why is it important? Turkish lira is absolutely destroyed after the heavy inflation. Argentina has I don't know how many of defaults they have. Government debts are all-time high, and inflation worldwide is much higher than it's basically no investment can. What?
100 per year.
Yeah. And basically inflation is so high that basically almost no investments can protect you from inflation. So savings worldwide are getting wrecked. And value of money is globally decreasing a lot, and central banks are losing credibility which they have. They are in very precarious situation that they can raise the interest rates enough to calm down the inflation, because debts are so high that they would basically cause worldwide global default. And that's actually the prime time for the crypto, or we were always building this for such environment, for high inflation environment. And this is the last macro slide. That basically good luck with, unfortunately, our debt. That US will have to refinance half of the debt in next 2 years, and no one knows how they will do it without the printing press. But and it's really perfect atmosphere to prove this industry. So Bitcoin already proved itself, or had perfect advertisement, thanks to Western governance, which weaponize financial system in unprecedented way, where they basically took hundreds of billions of Russians and other assets. And also more and more countries, they basically don't want to become, they don't want to come to the same situation. So more and more countries are trying to de-dollarize their economies and use other currencies for international trade. And also, Ethereum is the only deflationary and yield-bearing asset in high inflationary environment, which is, I think, very remarkable. And stable coins, even as those other countries outside of the US, they are trying to get rid of reliance on on dollar, the population of these countries, they are basically acting differently or like oppositely, and they are actually using stable coins or like alternatives to dollar more than ever. And unfortunately, they are using for it a lot Tron blockchain, which is like, yeah, doesn't need to talk about Tron. So DeFi was actually proven last year by surviving all the CeFi shit show which happened, because there was like clearly essential to CeFi itself that all these companies from the first slide, they were basically lending between each other, and they were lying to each other, like what's their collateral, what's their assets, etc. So once it cracked first time in Luna, then like basically the chain of liquidation like took the almost whole industry with itself. So perfect atmosphere for crypto. We are almost getting there from like, I don't know, 2019 when we start to like play mentally and on whiteboards with the Hydra. The Uniswap those days was like abysmal, like irrelevant, absolutely. But it was showing some like nice properties, and fast forward we are getting to such high numbers that like I wouldn't personally expect them a few years ago, because when I was also talking to a lot of market makers back then in 2020, 2021, they like all of them were like laughing on DeFi, like, oh, why I would trade in DeFi, it doesn't make sense. Like on FTX I have like perfect, like there are like perfect fees, very small fees, sure, but they were trading against you with your assets, with your money. So it looks like as an industry we are getting there, but the like events of last month I think just show that we are not really there. Like there was this like meme coin frenzy, not sure how much of you participated, probably not too much, and there was like few weeks of like cringe chasing of cringe tokens, and like it was I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of addresses with, I don't know, around 1 million of transactions daily. They were like chasing these like useless tokens, and the side effect of it was that the single transaction on ETH mainnet was like, again, like cost like $20. Like who will be using the like for transmitting money or like for money transferring thing which costs like $20, like if you are sending like $100, or like even like when you are sending $1,000, it's like 2%. So like it's nonsense. So basically this like casino use case, which serves just like very little amount of user, basically like DDoS complete Ethereum ecosystem, and even transactions on rollups, they were costing either sometimes as much as on mainnet in case of ZK rollups, or they cost still like single digits of dollars, which is quite mismatched against the promises which these technologies had. So this is basically Ethereum every time when bots are going to work, and they need to sandwich, and they need to sandwich like users and like front end. And when we look at the numbers globally, the Web3 actually looks like Web 0.0003, because the usage which we have right now, and we are like kind of like hitting limitations of like current infrastructure, is small. That is like, I was not like, to be honest, I was not counting it. It was more like joke, but like 1 million users from like 7 billion worldwide population is probably not, I'm probably not so far. And I was also looking at Solana, which works perfectly for the normies, but the amount of daily active accounts on Solana is also like in hundreds of thousands of users. That's not like these things are used by amount of people which would be like similar to like population of some state. And why I was mentioning the macro at the beginning was that if like whole Argentina or whole Turkey population, they would try to switch to crypto like tomorrow, like completely with all their transactions and all their like financial use cases which they need to do for like proper functioning economy, like everything would probably stop, and like everybody would be pissed, and probably a lot of people would lose money. So, and and the magicians in Bitcoin Miami, they also realized that Lightning channels and Lightning network is not going to save a day, because what they realized, and that was my personal thesis why Lightning can work, and also why probably also Ethereum layer 2s can't work as well as they are promising, is if you have unscalable underlying layer, then it's like inherently, or like it's unfortunately, it's also crippling a lot these layers on top of them. So even the underlying layer can be like slow. It also needs to perform, because the manifestation of this picture is something what is called Jevons paradox, but it has like multiple terms, and like the generalized term for this is actually induced demand. That means that if you have like a lot of demand and you start to increasing supply by, for example, building more roads, what you will find out is like over the time, all of the roads will be congested anyway, because they will be used more and more. So the inflating of infrastructure in like this like horizontal way of scaling is like not very helpful, and bringing other issues. And so unfortunately we are not ready yet, while like tens if not hundreds of millions of people worldwide would genuinely use crypto, not just for the speculation and for the casino, but they like genuinely need it. And to be honest, I can't use internet banking. It's like so awful and so ugly that like I can't withstand it. So I would also like to genuinely use it. But on the other hand, like I don't really like to pay for loan on Aave $100 in gas fees. Like it's like stupid. But anyway, so we are unfortunately not ready yet, and even if we would get scalability, the safety on like state-of-the-art approaches and mechanisms are still not ready yet. Like, not sure how many of you were on the talk of Alexei from Interlay yesterday, but he was basically presenting how light clients as a most safe way of bridging are basically very well described and pretty much researched from 2014, but for some reason we still don't have available them as in crypto in general. Actually Polkadot has, because like Polkadot bridging works on that approach, but Ethereum, there is no like usable light client. Solana is like, we don't even know if it's chain, which can have some notion of light client as we know it today, because it's like the finality is kind of like fragmented, let's say. So and also Alexei was presenting that one of the biggest, or like three of biggest exploits last year, where was most money lost, were actually exploits of bridges, which basically were not trustless enough, and they were like operated in a centralized way that basically lose to these ugly events. And why I'm also mentioning this, that this, like every time when such news are pop up that there was like another hack, like it needs to looks like absolute shit show from the outside for the normal people. Like, who wants to lose money like every month in some hack? Like, probably no one. So finally getting to the Polkadot, and like I'm like asking myself for years if we like really choose if we really choose good ecosystem, and also like many other people are asking me a lot, like Jakub, like, are you sure that Polkadot is like place to be? Like, don't you want to go to Ethereum or elsewhere? And it's like hard questions, but also it's like when I'm thinking about it deeper and like what are our fundamentals, and then when I'm comparing it to other ecosystems, I'm realizing that like there is no greener grass in other ecosystems, and they have like a lot of own issues, and they are also often using some of like not as genuine communication. So it looks like that everything is fine, but it's not fine. They are just lucky that nothing worse happened to them yet, and I hope like nothing bad happened. But for example, so yeah, Polkadot and Polkadot DeFi is actually right now in the similar state as Ethereum in 2019, early 2019. So like when you wake up in like I don't know like January, February 2019, and you were thinking about crypto, like people were asking, or you could think like, what is the DApp which I can use, or like where all these ICO money ended, and like what we get from it back, so we can use it, or like why all tokens were good just for the crowdfunding and they are like minus 99%. So I think the similar disillusionment is happening this year in Polkadot, that after big crowd loans, when like crazy amounts of DOT were locked for 2 years, people couldn't use as much, maybe despite of Moonbeam and a couple of other EVM compatible chains, and the infrastructure was coming together. There is a meme that Polkadot is too slow in development, but actually I experienced something different. Like I experienced in a couple of months, first shared security testnet, which was Rococo. It was like at the January 2021, and in May we had Kusama auctions like after 5 months, and like in June Kusama started to work with like five other blockchains with relay chain were like syncing together and chugging along. It was crazy, and also all together with XCM. So actually Polkadot wasn't slow. Polkadot was maybe like too fast. So the infrastructure was like changing too often, and like there was like a lot of bugs which have to be like resolved and fixed. But we finally got there. And if you look for other like more or less similar technologies, like I think most similar to us are actually rollups. They have their own set of issues through which we went, or like which we solved it sometimes like last year or even earlier, because Polkadot and parachains, they were meant to be built up from ground up and from the first principle, while Ethereum and other ecosystems, they're like, oh, these rollups, this is like cool use case, that's probably how we should scale, so let's use this duct tape here and like then here, and yeah, and then we will find out something, and we will find out how it will work over the time, which is also like legit approach and probably like better approach for the business. But for example, the harsh reality of Arbitrum and Optimism as biggest Ethereum layer 2 is basically their block production and liveness is like at the hands of one single computer and one single like person or like small group of their DevOps teams, which needs to be sure that everything is working fine, that they will have no downtime, and there is like no invalid state transition, or there is like no one is trying to do something malicious, because the harsh reality is that like especially Optimism rollup, they have no defense mechanisms, or like at least opens, so like other people can like verify it and chime into it. That is like centralized in these like US companies, and especially right now when we see that US as a jurisdiction is like surprisingly adversarial to crypto, I can easily imagine a scenario where some like US officials will knock on door of Arbitrum or Optimism that, hey, what you are doing here, that's like like there's like unlicensed money transmitter services with a lot of like derivatives exchanges you need to shut down. But it's like not a very open, permissionless ecosystem. And Vitalik and other people, they are also dreaming a lot about like light client. Like you heard a lot about light clients like yesterday and a little bit of today. But what other ecosystems are trying to get there, like we already figured it out. Again, like as other ecosystems, like for example Cosmos, they realize that shared security is absolutely necessity. They are like trying to embed it right now, and they are like figuring out if it's good or not. But also the replicating security approach has like some drawbacks. It's not really as scalable as what we are using in Polkadot. And also another challenge, again, in the rollup world is like how these optimism and ZK rollups can communicate together. And basically all points above is making Polkadot and parachains as a ecosystem most cost-efficient ecosystem, which is like another like underappreciated advantage of the whole ecosystem, that thanks to shared security, we don't, like parachains, they don't really need to throw on people a lot of new tokens as a like staking inflation, like 10%, 5%, 7% yearly as a layer ones. They should really like calculate properly what's the cost for running collators, then to have some like a reasonable amount of collators, like 30, 50. You don't really need as much of them, but it's also obviously better to have them more than 3 or 5, and like pay for them like properly, and then those tokens, which they don't need to use for the paying for the security, use for building or for users incentives or user acquisition. And last but not least, the Polkadot has like real governance, or Polkadot and Substrate, they have like real governance, like voters who are voting for changes. These changes are happening automatically, while on ETH again or like elsewhere, you can vote for something, and then like team will decide like, we don't want to do this, and you as a like token holder, you can't do anything about it. But like I was chilling here parachains a lot. Obviously, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, and that unfortunately the whole crypto infrastructure is like dominated too much by EVM standards. So for folks like Moonbeam and A-Star and others who have EVM, it was easy for them to bootstrap like big TVL numbers, because like it's easy to implement EVM-like networks. So this is like really like a huge win of EVM, but also what can do parachains about it? They can either implement the same palette as Moonbeam has, the Frontier palette, which has like the best compatibility of Substrate and with EVM, or like its best EVM compatibility layer. Basically what I was talking with projects, with other alternative layer ones implementing EVM, like they were basically, all of them are struggling much more than Moonbeam, because like Frontier is like really great. But then there is Centrifuge also working on another approach, that basically on the RPC level, they can change the calls which look similar for the outsiders for the EVM, but it's still Substrate. And obviously, operating infrastructure for our own chain is much bigger challenge than for dApp or smart contracts, which many of us realize over the time. But again, it's something that once dust is settled, and then we have these like best practices. It's then not this big pain point. And obviously, it's Polkadot was kind of famous because of like Polkadot.js. So people not as deep in the ecosystem, they left because they were interacting with Polkadot.js, and then they started to hate everything Polkadot, and they don't want to hear anything else about us. Then accessibility is a big point. So how we can get to the not just to the Polkadot but the parachains and use them, and bridging is still to be not decided, but probably unfortunately just deployed. And we lost very promising native stablecoin, and we have to invest much more in safety, because consensus safety is cool, but the human errors are unfortunately much more often, and liquidity as the final boss. So many people, as I said, like many people are still stuck in like 2021, before the talisman and before Nova Wallet. So they are still spreading this like ugly narrative. So you need to fight them with me on Twitter and elsewhere. And like these like lovely wallets, like what is missing? Like they are like much more nice than MetaMask or anything else. And like Nova is like absolute super app. It's like your smartphone for crypto, because like if you are not familiar with it, you can do on-chain governance with it. You can stake. You can use old apps. It's like EVM compatible, and the same talisman. And so like they are both like beautiful, and like I'm like very proud that we have them in ecosystem. So how to overcome these like ecosystem challenges? Like UX. I think on the wallet side, we are like already getting there. Like wallet teams are doing like a really great job. One pretty easy thing which we can do as an ecosystem is that I truly believe that whole ecosystem should implement DOT as fee asset and allow users to pay gas fees on their parachains and dApps with fees, with the DOT. Excuse me, because DOT is much more abundant and much more widespread and much more accessible than your small parachain token. And if someone is telling like, oh, but then my parachain token won't have like any value accrual, it's absolute nonsense, because the good UX, which will spread by word of mouth to other people, is a million times more important than your chain accrued like 50 cents of value that someone had figured out after half an hour how to pay fees on the token. And also, we are bringing the possibility of paying gas in other tokens as well, which we implemented on our chain as well. Obviously, in cross-chain world is like much more complicated, but I think we are on the good track with it, especially thanks to XCMV3. And you can go even further, and the likes like Subsocial and Unique Network, they really are leveraging the app chain, and why we are using app chains, and that's like we can really say that these kind of use cases, they don't really need pay fees at all, because maybe using them is much more valuable for the network than these peanuts which you can like earn as a network on them. And obviously, how we want to scale Web3 with awful UX. The UX needs to be perfect, and the UX needs to be as close to Web2 as possible. So I'm happy that Subsocial and others they are understanding it. And the last point is my favorite or most hated one. That I think one of the worst crypto UX in general is that you come to website of some dApp. It can be like whatever, in whatever ecosystem, and you need to connect your wallet to see what is there. And like you can be like I'm traveling often, so when I am on like airports or somewhere when it's just like public Wi-Fi or where it's like expensive data or whatever, or I just don't want to connect right now to the application and put somewhere password and my login, and I can see what is the application about. Like I'm probably never ever visiting because like I'm so pissed that like that's horrible. So here is a lot of parachain teams. Please allow to users to look around, and then when they can like look around and find out, they also will fuck around. And accessibility. So recently we got native USDT support for Binance. We will also get native USDC soon, TM. I can't disclose the timelines, and you know how is it with timelines in crypto and IT in general, but USDC is really finally coming. Kraken is very pro Polkadot, and why I'm mentioning Kraken is not because I have any stake in Kraken. I don't have any stake in Kraken, but Kraken is like very few only exchange which was never hacked, never exploited. They were never doing like stupid shit. They were never play with user funds. Then except of Kraken, the only alternative legit SDM is probably just Coinbase. But Coinbase is not so pro Polkadot. And more on-ramps and off-ramps are coming. The Banxa is one of the biggest one, and one smaller one, but which I'm like much more excited to be honest, is Holy Health, which is new crypto card, which is built by degens for degens. They are not supporting Polkadot yet, but they will, thanks to us. And then it will unlock much more nice use cases and much more practical use cases. I need to say thank you to Equilibrium team, which are trying to solve compatibility with Ledger, but also Ledger was almost another big black swan for the ecosystem, and really and like what was disclosed really shake trust in it. So we were always big proponents of Polkadot Vault, aka former parity signer, and I also believe there is like much better alternative to Ledger. The setup is kind of like clunky and like pretty long, but as you have the setup and you are doing more than like 2-3 transactions in consecutive in line, there's like much better use case instead of like clicking million times on a small device with small buttons. Bullshit. If you don't know how the parity signer working, basically it will generate for you QR code, you will scan it, and the transaction is signed. It's like, and then if you are doing like multiple transactions, you are basically doing this. So like much better UX, and highly recommending as like alternative to Ledger. Yeah. Okay. So I have 3 more minutes. Personally, there was quite a lot of things which I want to share. Anyway, so TLDR, we need to invest much more in safety. We want to increase safety in the whole ecosystem. So you might see Polkadot Assurance Legion, which is upcoming initiative led by our guy Valery, which basically will bring much more wide-head hackers into ecosystem and much more bounties, which will bring much more very adversarial eyes to look at code and critical infrastructure to prevent events like AUSD and Nomad exploits. Also, these 2 exploits inspire us to develop. This is the proposal, and this is what we are trying to push to the whole Cumulus repository for all parachains, which is basically XCM rate limiter. That means that if another token in the ecosystem will be exploited and someone would be able to mint billions of them or trillions, doesn't matter, your parachains will not accept them. So it will be like slowing them down, so you won't be able to dump them or send them away, because the AUSD was really spreading like wildfire. And the final boss, liquidity. I don't have much time, unfortunately, but TLDR, I think we are positioned pretty well to deal with MEV, either as Mangata is doing or as we are doing, as like different approaches, different trade-offs. But anyway, Polkadot has like pretty good tradition in actually LSTs with Bifrost and other likes, but using LSTs, especially ETH ones, would be like expensive as hell. Like I can guarantee you in next months and years. So it will be actually much better to accumulate LSTs, but not just LSTs, but also pure, fresh, eco, bio, raw Bitcoins, like true Bitcoins, no wrapped shit, thanks to interlay on this lovely, cool feature, which is our upcoming feature called DCA, which is not just traditional DCA, but you can also use for TWAPing in a couple of minutes or hours, but you can also stretch the periods of accumulation basically for hours, days, weeks, and months. And basically, literally, there is nothing better than DCA in bear market. No financial advice, but like it's, yeah, like you are not DCAing in bull market. And also, as the bull market will come, you can use this lovely DCA for exiting out of the position. So TLDR, this is our game plan for Polkadot. Parachains have to leverage strengths of others and not compete against each other. We need to deliver in parallel all necessities, which was mentioned so far. We don't have too many tries. We have to like focus on quality and on security. We need to build up ecosystem from the ground up, ecosystem liquidity with the usage of Omnipool, DCA, and TWAP, and supporting native bridges, native assets, and genuine projects. And only sufficient spot liquidity will unlock all other DeFi use cases, which we or our partners are bringing, like lending and borrowing, derivatives, leverage, hedging. Actually, you can try to use it, or like you can start to play with Zeitgeist for hedging use cases as well. I think it's like very underappreciated feature of Zeitgeist. It allows you to set up hedging contracts, and we need to make all this happen. And until then, new stablecoin will emerge, and the window of opportunity for Polkadot, I think, is like 12 to 24 months. So we need your support. We need to put our shit together, and like we can all make it. Thanks.